And we're back to learning to code. Once again, freecodecamp.org. It's already the 17th course right here on responsive web design. It should be the product landing page. It's a certification project. As always, I'm just going to show you how to pass it. So the styling and all of this extra stuff, this is up to you. Treat it as a regular project, as something that you really wanted to build for your portfolio or for a client. But I'm just going to go over the necessary steps that are definitely needed to get past the tests when you run your final website. And you can see here the example. We should have most of these elements in our product landing page as well. Let us start with the usual stuff. We need the doc type declaration. We need our HTML head and body. Afterwards, I'll give it a title. I add the meta information for charset, the responsive behavior, and I'm going to link the CSS. And then we should already be done with the head, and we can dive into the body. But first we need a header. Let me also add a main section below. For the header, it needs to have an ID of header. So this would be the first bullet point right here in our user story. We need an image. But let me create a div container. I'm going to use that later on to style it in the CSS. Now I'll add the image, and afterwards I want to add some text, so I'll use a span element. Let me give it the ID of logo text, and the image should have the ID of header minus img. That's given under bullet point 2 in the user story. Obviously a logo would be a good image here. So just for this example, I'll pick right here something from Wikipedia that I find via a Google search. I right click on it and I copy the address of the graphic, and now I paste it as a value for the source, and there it is. As I've said, this is just an example, so you could pick any image that you want. Let me set the width to, I have to correct this here, width as the attribute, and so it should be fine at around 200, maybe 150, something like this. I don't want to have it too big for as long as I work on my HTML part here. Usually an image has an alt attribute. So let me call that maybe like company logo, something like this. Logo text. I don't know, let me make it about supplements. So it's my name, my company, therefore it's Brick Supplements. And this is inside of the div container right here. And maybe it's a good idea if I style this already, instead of going over the rest. We define a root selector, maybe we'll need that later on. And then I already target the image element, and I set the width right here so that I can delete it as an attribute in my index.html. So it now has this smaller size of 150. Therefore our image selector works. Let me also bring the text in line and make it look a little bit better. As I said, this is optional. You should do that yourself with the stuff that you've already learned in the previous FCC, so freecodecamp course sections. I'm just going to go over some basics here. Let me check. We need to use a flexbox at least once. Here it says it as the last test. So why not use it on our logo container div that I've created for the image and the logo text. So I'll make it display flex. And let me align them to the center. So that already looks better. But we can improve the text definitely. Let me target the ID of the span element, which is logo minus text. And I increase the font size and give it a different font family maybe. Let me check. I should also give it a padding. So for left and right, I'll set 0 for top and bottom. And the second value here is for left and right. So I've got a little bit of a separation between the image and our logo text. Font family, I'll change that maybe to Verdana. That's an inbuilt font in most browsers, so we can use that directly without linking to them. And the font, let me make it maybe like 20. But it should be size, not font weight. My mistake here. So let me fix the property to font size. And I'll make it maybe 20. So that it looks a little bit better. And we are done at least with this div container. And we can go to the next bullet point right here. What do we need? We need a nav element that's also in the header. So let me put it right here below my div container. It should have an ID of nav minus bar. And inside we want to have at least 3 clickable elements. Usually you want to use an unordered list for that. Let me give it an ID of navbar minus links. And inside I'll add 3 list items. These are going to be my clickable elements. And they should have a class of nav link. So nav minus link. But obviously the class should belong to the anchor element inside. And I want to use these anchor elements to link to the various sections on my website. I need at least 3. So let me make that maybe like features, video, and form. Under the text I use features, video, and order now, so the form is for ordering, something like this. Let me directly create these 3 sections in my main right here. Make sure that the ID has the same value as the href for the links in the navbar. Otherwise the linking won't work, so this internal linking. And maybe I'll already add some H2s to my sections. Once again, this is just an example, so I'll use something that I can come up with on the fly. So let me make it about our supplements, and the features would be listed below. Maybe like watch for yourself, where we want to put the video, and finally order now, where we want to put a form. So under the section features, you may want to add another on our list and then place some features as a list here, like in the example. It's up to you. Use some of the elements that you've learned in freecodecamp so far. Now let us check the video. This is something new. We haven't covered that until now in freecodecamp. And here you can see we can use a video element or an iframe element. Iframes, you might have seen it on YouTube, so I'll just use this example video. If you click on share, you can embed a video. On here it says on the right hand side the code. It is an iframe element. You can just copy paste this. Click on copy below, or just Ctrl C and then Ctrl V right here in this section for the video. And the video should pop up directly on your website. Let's go over this. At least the basics. We've got width and height. You know that from images already, and a source. There's also a title that's given a frame border that's set to 0. It would give a border to the frame as the name suggests, and the rest we don't need it, at least not for this example, so I just delete it. Don't worry about it. We haven't covered that in freecodecamp, so that's stuff for a different video. Definitely we need an ID of video. That's given right here, bullet point number 6. But then we should be already good with the video. And we can check the last section, which should contain a form. Or in general, our website should have a form. I'll put it in the last section. And it should have an ID of form. There's a typo right here. Let me correct that. What's inside? Well, we need an input field with the ID of email, where you can enter an email address. I'll nest that inside of a label. That is something that you should usually do when you create forms. And you've got your input fields always nested in a label. So the input is for the email. So let me use a for attribute for the label, and I connect it with an ID for the input. And now we need the type of email. What else do we need? We need a placeholder text inside. So placeholder attribute. And we make it like something at gmail.com. Obviously we need an equal sign right here. And the quotation marks. Now we can see it already, and if I write something in it, let's say test, it disappears, so our placeholder works. Usually an input of type email is required, so let me add that. What else do we need? We need a submit button. So that would be bullet point number 11. Let me just use an input field for that as well. It needs to be nested inside of the form. So put it right after our label for the email. I'll add a BR tag, which forces a line break. I'll use the label once again, nest the input inside, type submit. Value, I'll make it submit. My browser set to German, therefore it was a different value by default. Let me connect it via form and ID. And that should be already fine. So it only works when I add this user form for an email address, otherwise it's going to give you an error message. So that's what we need. What else? Bullet point number 12. We need to add this mock URL to the form. And you've seen that in freecodecamp already. So we need the action attribute, and then as a value add the URL. So this is, in simple terms, where the information that's being input by the user would be sent to. And now we are basically done with the HTML part. Let me run the test and I check. I may have done a typo here and there. For example, here the header, I've made a mistake somewhere. Let me check it. So we need a header with an ID of header. I've done it, but obviously we don't need the hashtag symbol before it. So let me get rid of that. So that was a typo that I've made previously right at the start, but now they're good here in these tests. What else do we need? Our email should have a name attribute of email, so let me add that to the input element of email right here. And then we should be good with this as well. And the rest is CSS. So I run it again and I check it. Alright. So we're done with the basic outline and we can jump to the CSS part once again. Let me resize these windows a little bit. Let's start with the navbar. We want to have it positioned to the top always. So a good idea is to use position, set it to fixed. And afterwards we'll set the position manually by using top and set it to 0. So now it's on the top left where it almost should be, but we definitely don't want to have it on top of our logo. So let me add some spacing by adding a left value, maybe like 350. I'll also add a padding, but I have to readjust that later on. So let me just use 10 pixels for now. And now we want to bring these elements in line so that we don't have them as a list. At first, we can select right here our unordered list. It has the ID of navbar minus links. So let me use the ID selector, navbar minus links. I'll set the display to flex. And let me get rid of the list style so that we don't have these bullet points anymore. Let me adjust the padding now so that it's in line. Maybe like 15 pixels is a good value. We want to have a little bit of separation between these three elements of our navbar links. Let me use right here the class selector for nav minus link. It's a class selector, so it's not a hashtag, it's a dot before it. And we can simply add a padding. And now it's spaced out a little bit. Let me go down with the position right here. I think that 300 should be a good value. So now it's positioned well and it's in line, it's always at the top. So we should be fine with the next test and we should complete that as well. This, by the way, should be bullet point number 13. And if I run it, you can see we're good here. Finally, we also need a media query. So we need add media, only screen and a given condition. So what do we want to target? Let's say, just as an example, we want to target our video. If the screen gets too small, we don't want the video to be too big, so it should size down relatively. We could, for example, use here the ID selector video, or we could directly use the element, the iframe, as it's the only video that we've got. And even if we would add more videos, we want them to size down as well. So let me use the iframe element selector. And maybe I'll target the width and I'll set it to a relative value. Let's say 90%. And right here for the condition, let's use max width of like 600 pixels. So if I size that down right here, you can see the video gets sized down relatively and it doesn't disappear to the right hand side. Maybe like 750 or 700 is better value for the condition, but again, it's just an example. And this should already be it. We should pass all of the tests. Once more, the certification projects are for you to test if you've understood everything. So add a couple of more features to it, design your website a little bit better, try to use stuff that you've learned in freecodecamp so far. But what I've shown you here is what you definitely need to do to pass it. So when you get stuck, refer to my walkthrough. And this was the 17th course on freecodecamp.org. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.